It is a pleasure to host this event with you today. You said climate change is real, yes, and it can be deadly. And we know that climate change is basically greenhouse gas emissions, or CO2. And this is why we are discussing to put a price on carbon, because climate and nature cannot pay this price anymore. And I'm very glad that we're joining forces to give carbon pricing the push it deserves, and to discuss with industry how climate ambition and industrial innovation go hand in hand. Because only with industry can we build a prosperous future on a livable planet. And that is what we are working for in the European Union. In the past year, we have engaged in a series of, we call it Clean Transition Roundtables, with different sectors of our economy. And we all are very clear that we want to be climate neutral by 2050. But what we discuss is how decarbonisation and competitiveness can go hand in hand. So what is it what you need to reach that goal of climate neutrality? And based on this dialogue, I will put forward a new clean industrial deal to complement the European Green Deal. Now, such a clean transition dialogue, I think, is also needed at global level. And therefore, I want to thank the CEOs from different continents for joining us today. I want to focus today in particular on carbon pricing. First of all, how it works in Europe. Secondly, why it should be part of our global agenda. And the third element is food for thought, how we can further extend it to nature credits. Let me start with how it works in Europe. By now, carbon pricing is well established in the European Union. It is almost 20 years since we first put a price on carbon with the so-called emission trading system. Let me give you a few figures about the success of this system. Since then, we reduced the emissions in the sectors it covers by 50%, while our economy kept growing. We could prove that carbon pricing is a market-based instrument that works to decrease emissions and increase the GDP. Carbon pricing also, of course, generates revenues. Over 200 billion euros were generated since we introduced the emission trading system. 100% of these revenues, so all these revenues, are invested in the clean transition, so in climate action and in research and development of new technologies and innovation. For example, through our European Innovation Fund or the European Hydrogen Bank. We invest in groundbreaking clean technologies, for example, in carbon capture and use of CO2, but also in renewables and low-carbon fuels. Now, this is the European level, and the national governments can also spend their revenues on the same goals, or they can use the revenues to support citizens to adapt to the clean transition, just as you explained, Justin, that it has to be fair and we do not leave anybody behind. So, carbon pricing transforms pollution into innovation, and it sends a very clear message to the business world. If you pollute, you pay, but if you go clean, it pays off. And through our carbon border adjustment mechanism, we ensure that if you innovate, you can also compete on a level playing field. So we prevent carbon leakage from Europe and encourage cleaner industrial production globally. And this brings me to my second point, the global dimension. Just imagine if more countries put a price on carbon, we could cut emissions worldwide while generating an enormous amount of revenues for the clean transition that we could reinvest in a social climate fund or in innovation and R&D. And that is the main reason why the European Union has joined Canada's Global Carbon Pricing Challenge. We are assisting countries who want to develop carbon pricing. We're working in a spirit of partnership with other partners. And this all builds on 35 new agreements that we have concluded in the past 5 years in this dialogue on clean tech, on hydrogen, and on critical raw materials. My final point. What works for climate should also work for nature. For generations, humanity has only rewarded the plundering of our natural environment. You can get rich by taking fossil fuels out of the ground, but you'll certainly not get rich by putting carbon back into the ground. You can make good money by raising a forest to the ground, but not by planting a new one and letting it grow old. And we know that climate change, the loss of biodiversity, and the loss of nature are intertwined. So we should reward those actors who provide ecosystem services and create a market for restoring our planet with the right standards and an active engagement of our companies. I'm deeply convinced it can work. And whether you call it carbon credits or nature credits, it is time to put a price on pollution. It is time to put a premium on clean innovation and nature restoration, and scale up this rising market. So let us work together with these new business models that are good for the planet and good for our prosperity. I thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.